How's everybody doing? Welcome online. My name's Graham Cowgill, one of the pastors here, and I'm so glad that you guys are joining us today. It's cool that even though we're online this week and next week, it still feels like, hey, we're a part of something bigger than ourselves, even though we're not all here together. Just knowing that other people are kind of gathered the same way that you are, sitting in their living room with no pants. Where else can you watch church with no pants? Well, I guess every week you can, but without getting arrested. It's a pretty awesome opportunity. So I'm glad that you guys are here. We are in the middle of this series called Irrational Generosity, where we are looking at the character of God, and the character of God is generous, the character of God is irrational, and it compels us to respond in a very similar way. So generosity we have been defining as this giving without the expectation or even the desire to receive in return. Is there desire to receive in return? Of course. When you love somebody, yes, you want to be loved in return, but pure generosity is spurred on by your love for somebody. God's generosity to us is spurred on by his love for us, not what we're going to give him in return. What are we possibly going to offer, right? But he just loves his children so much, he is compelled to give. He's compelled to be generous. He gives forgiveness freely. He gives blessings freely. And he does it because we are his children. And the irrational part is that we can't figure God out, which is a really good thing, because it'd be very difficult for us to receive from somebody that we have all figured out, to be led by somebody that we have all figured out. In fact, I heard somebody once say, I don't want to worship a God that I have all figured out. Right? Then that just makes me on par with that, and I don't trust that. God's ways are so much greater than my ways, and his thoughts greater than my thoughts, and I find comfort in that. I can't see 2 minutes ahead of me, and God is always orchestrating things in my life, putting me around people, giving me opportunities to do things that are going to have eternal implications. What's Hey, we're going to simplification all over these implications today. But he gives us opportunities to apply that who knows how they're going to come to fruition later in life. And so, today, the title of the sermon is Cheerful Giver. How glad are you that you're at home watching online and you don't have to avoid eye contact at all today when we talk about giving? I want to start with a verse. A little passage, 2 Corinthians chapter 9. Remember this: whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and whoever sows generously will also reap generously. Each of you should give what you have decided in your heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. And God is able to bless you abundantly, so that in all things, at all times, having all that you need, you will abound in every good work, as it is written, they have freely scattered their gifts to the poor, their righteousness endures forever. Man, I will tell you that at Shoreline Church, what we care about is talking about real life issues. We don't care about talking about concepts that don't apply. What happens in everyday life? That's what we want to talk about. How does God speak into our everyday life? And I'm going to tell you, there might not be a more dominant aspect of everyday life than money. And so why would we run away? If God wants to be involved in every area of our life, intimately involved, in conversation, in decision, right? He wants to be lockstep with us, then why would we turn off what is probably the biggest piece of our pie chart in daily life to God? Pastor Robbie said earlier that this has been a challenging series, and I believe that challenge is a beautiful thing. Challenge is not something to run away from. If God ever challenges us, or the Bible word is convicts, just that feeling that you should start something or stop something, if God gives you that, that is something to be celebrated. Because God is saying there's probably a barrier that you have between me and you that is keeping us from intimately embracing. And for a lot of us, man, that financial piece is just a conversation we don't want to have. It's messy. It's probably been ruined before. Somebody has abused that. And so we'd rather not think about it. And God is saying, no, wait, listen, I want freedom for you inside of that. I want that to feel like a beautiful aspect of your relationship with me. So I thought today, let's look at that, not in this guise of, ooh, we're so apologetic. And no, let's talk about it. Man, if we got some crap there that's keeping us from embracing God, let's get that out of the way. That's something to be celebrated, the challenging conviction this morning, okay? So, by the way, when it says that God loves a cheerful giver, I really like that phrasing. And of course, God loves everybody, right? It's not like, oh, only if you're cheerful. God loves everybody. So what does it mean that God loves a cheerful giver? I think it's because God is a cheerful giver. God is irrationally generous. And when we do things that reflect his character, it pleases him. You know, when I see my son do things that I like, it pleases me. We were out to eat the other day. Actually, we were out to eat with Jess, and we were having a conversation. And I think about baseball, and Mike Trout came up in the conversation, and Jess's husband Lou goes, Mike Trout's a generational talent. And my son goes, you're a generational talent. And I was like, that's what I was going to say. It's like the most snarky, sarcastic little comment. I was like, yay! And so, of course, I always love my son. But when he's able to crush somebody's soul with sarcasm, I love him even more, right? So when we mirror God's character, he loves it. He is a cheerful giver, and so he loves it when we're a cheerful giver. So we're going to look at today, that's the why, how we can be a cheerful giver. There are 3 components that I think make up being a cheerful giver. So we're going to look at the what do we give, when do we give, and then finally we're going to look at why not. Why not give? And that's not just a, hey, why not? I think that there are actually some reasons that we need to articulate that we don't give that are going to be important. So first, what do we give? Matthew 25, there's a parable of the talents. Maybe you've heard that, which is a story that Jesus tells. And he says, you know, a parable is actually a story that he makes up that has a point to it. And you know what they say about a parable? It's better than one bull. It's my favorite. I love the fact that there are people at home right now that probably just turned this off because you hate that joke. And you know what? You don't deserve to hear the rest of this message. So the parable that Jesus tells, called the parable of the talents, saying that there's this wealthy man who's going off for a long time, and he has his 3 servants that he's going to entrust money to, talents or bags of gold. And actually, each bag is a substantial amount of money. So to one person, he gives 5 bags of gold, 5 talents. To the next, he gives 2 bags of gold. And finally, to the third, he gives 1. Goes away for a long time and comes back. And when he comes back, he's asking for them to give kind of a report of what they've done with the money that he gave to him, that he entrusted to him. So the guy who he got 5 bags comes up and goes, what's going on, man? He's super pumped to give his report, right? He goes, I know you gave me 5. I doubled it. And now here are your 10 bags of gold. And the master goes, dude, well done, right? Daps him up, first dap ever in history, and goes, congratulations, well done, you good and faithful servant. I've given you these 5, you've invested them, you've done something with it, well done. Second guy comes up, who he gave 2 bags to, and he goes, hey, what about you? And he goes, hey, you gave me 2 bags, I doubled it, got 4, here are your 4 bags. Second dap in history, right? Good job. You good and faithful servant. I gave you 2, you were faithful with that, you invested in it, well done. And then the guy who gave 1 bag comes in, probably just moping, right? I'm sure he's got sinus infection, he just seems like that guy. And he goes, hey, what'd you do with the 1 bag? And he goes, well, you know what? I just thought, you know, if I screwed anything up, you'd probably be mad. And so, or asthma inhaler probably. And so I just, I buried the 1 bag in the ground, and I just kind of sat here and played World of Warcraft. So here you go, here's your 1 bag, what do you think? And the master goes, oh, bro, like you blew it. You blew it. He even says, like, you lazy servant. Why would you do that? These other guys invested what I gave them. Why would you sit on this? And to the tune of he takes that bag and says, I'm taking this from you and I'm going to give it to these people who actually did something with what I gave them. Now listen, there are a few lessons that I think that we can learn from this because this parable is so juicy. There's so much there. The first is this. The guy with 5 bags, right? When he comes and he gives 5 more, what does the master say? He goes, well done, right? Good job. Well done. When the guy with 2 bags comes and goes, I doubled it and got 4, what does the master say? Well done. Now, here's what's interesting. He does not say, hey, that's only 4 bags. Steve over there gave me 10 bags, right? He doesn't say that. He goes, I know what I gave you, and you are faithful with what I gave you. I entrusted you 2 bags, and you did well with that. So here's what we learn through that is that you are not responsible for what God has given someone else. You are not responsible for what God has given someone else. If you're in here, or you're watching online, God knows exactly what you're going through. God knows your savings account. God knows your checking account. God knows your debt. God knows your job. God knows what your job will be in a year. He is not calling you to be faithful with what he's given the person to your left or to your right, your neighbor to your left or to your right. He knows your situation. And if he's calling you to something, if he's nudging you to something, there is a reason. There is a reason. He will give you a challenge. He will give you an assignment with your finances that is specific to you. He knows more about your financial situation than you do. You are not responsible for what he's given somebody else. That's not what he's not going to come back and say, hey, what did you do with how much I gave them? He says, here's what I've given you, which I know. I know how much I've given you. Have you been faithful with that? Have you been willing to invest in that? There are people watching, there are people in here who have a lot of money. God knows that. There are people in here who have a little bit of money. God knows that. There are people in here who are medium. God knows that. The thing is, he has a plan for your money. He has a beautiful plan for your money. And chances are he's going to use your financial situation, not just in your relationship with him, but to affect other people's relationship with him, maybe for eternity. Is wealth good? I think wealth is a tool. Wealth is a tool. Wealth can be used for good. You know what else? I think poverty is a tool. I absolutely think poverty is a tool. I think that the point is to be completely present where you are. In my life, I've seen people whose lives are like really crappy and something's going down and they have faith in the middle of that. That means a lot to me. When everything's great, yay, and they have faith, it's like, yeah, so would I, right? Give me that yacht. But when things are not great and they have faith and they're connected to God, then I think to myself, okay, there's something that's real there. And so whether it's poverty or whether it's a season of wealth, no matter what it is, what you're in right now is not the defining moment. It's what you do with it. It is a tool to be able to affect people for eternity. God knows where you are and he'll use it. Second thing, so what do we give, by the way? We give what we have. God knows that. He will give you challenges and assignment throughout the day, throughout the week, based on how your unique situation is calling for. Second is when. When do we give? When do we give? All right, here's the second lesson from the parable of the talents. I think that most of us consider ourselves the one bag guy, right? We're looking over there at the 2 bag person or the 5 bag person, and we're thinking to ourselves, okay, does it really matter if I give? That's probably what the 1 bag guy was thinking. Yeah, if 5 invests and doubles, that's 10. If 2 invests and doubles, that's 4. Who cares? I got 1 bag. Like, what can I possibly do? And we think that all the time. So what if I give $1,000? Is that going to like impact the world? What if I give $100? Is that going to impact the world? What if I give $10? Is that going to impact the world? And the reason that we sit on our one bag a lot of times is not because, no, you can't have it. It's just because we don't think, like, what could God possibly do with this, right? So 2 things in that. Number 1 is giving is oftentimes more about the health of our hearts than the difference it makes. Oftentimes, more about the health of our hearts than the difference it makes. I used to have this rule where the rule was I wouldn't give money to homeless. I would give food to homeless. And I think that there was an okay piece of that. The good piece of that was, I didn't want to be enabling, right, if they had a problem. But the opportunity to actually give food to homeless was pretty few and far between. And so I just realized, man, it's been like 3 years since I've given anything to anybody who's homeless. And instead of it being a good rule, what it started to do was just allow me to avoid an entire demographic. I would never even have conversation. I would just ignore them, right? Because, I can't give food, so that's because I got this rule, so that's my only option. I was in Huntington Beach, and I was at a McDonald's, and this couple came up to me when I was sitting there, and they gave me this big, long story. They're homeless, both of them were. Big, long story about what had happened and this room that had fallen through, and blah, 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 blah. And then they asked for an amount of money that was pretty substantial. Substantial enough that it wasn't like, oh, here you go. Like I would have to go to the bank and withdraw this amount of money. And so, sitting there listening to the story, in my mind, I'm thinking this rule that I have, right? I'm thinking all these different things, like all these thoughts are swirling. And so finally, I say, hey, if you're willing, I'll go withdraw this amount. I have this worship night thing that I'm leading tonight. Would you be willing to go to that if I gave you this money? They said yes. And I was like, okay. And so I drive to the bank. The whole time I'm having this conversation with God. What's my biggest holdup with this, right? Like, why am I? And I feel like he's talking back, and he's bringing up these doubts, and he's bringing up these fears, and he's bringing up this pride about, I hope this money's used the right way. That's what Graham's thinking. I hope my money's is used the right way. Long story short, I get the money. I go, I meet them at the place that we had talked about meeting, and big, long, drawn-out story short, it turned out to be a scam, and this is kind of a story that they just have memorized between the two of them, and they go and they, ask different families to give. So I'd given them the money, they took off, and I remember getting back in my car after the McDonald's trip and hearing God say, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you. And I realized in that moment that I had spent an entire day talking to God about something that I had just never, ever spoken to God about. I had realized that I had brought up pride in myself, that I had viewed myself an owner of money and not a manager of God's money. This is my money, and you better use it for the thing that I think is good. And God's like, no, man, your heart has become so callous. It's become so callous. And so I think even more than the difference that it makes, who knows, right? Who knows what happens in that story? But God was saying, this is an opportunity that I gave you for generosity for me and you to connect. If you feel something in your life, if you feel God nudging you towards giving, my guess is that there is a reason. And it might not always be the reason that you think. I thought, 10 years down the road, this story's going to be on the news, and this family's going to go, oh, this guy gave me this money at McDonald's. No. What actually happened is Graham got humbled and started to recognize that this is God's money anyway. And what's most important is that I take the shield off, the callous off my heart, and that I begin to respond to God, not even knowing the difference that it makes. So, more about the health of our hearts and the difference it makes. Second is this. From that is, you never know what God can do with an act of generosity. You really don't. You never know what God can do with an act of generosity. Even If we consider ourselves the one bag person, and what could God possibly do? One of my favorite stories about giving is back in the day in the temple when people are giving to God, you have these wealthy, rich guys, right, who are making this big show of, look how much money I'm giving, and how many zeros in a million, right, that type of thing, dropping their money in, and then you have this old woman who hobbles up there, and she's got her 2 small coins, and she drops them in, and I'm sure it's like a world of cash, and you could hear the coins hit, right? And Jesus says, man, this woman has given more than anybody, because these guys give out of their abundance, and this woman gives all that she had. I try to take myself to the mentality of this woman inside of that place, and she's probably thinking, what if she was thinking, what difference could 2 coins make? What is this possibly going to do? And you know what it did? Over 2,000 years later, billions of people have heard the story of her generosity. You never know what God can do with a small act of generosity. Our grapefruit tree that we have in our backyard absolutely got down this year. So many grapefruits, it's just obscene. I've been trying to give them away. I can't give them all away enough. So I wanted to teach my kids about generosity. We took this tub of grapefruits out to the street. We made 2 signs that say free grapefruits, and I was teaching my kids about generosity, and I said, listen, generosity is giving without wanting anything in return, right? So we did all this role playing. How are you going to act when somebody rolls up? What are you going to say? What if somebody says, well, here, take some money? What are you going to say? And so they are all trained to say, oh, no money allowed. We're just giving this because we love people, right? That was our generosity lesson. So we had this grapefruit table sitting there, and people are coming by, everything's going great. This lady comes up on a golf cart, and Gage just got the verbiage off just a little bit, right? So she goes, hey, how much are the grapefruits? And he goes, well, you don't have to pay anything. I was like, almost, right? So this woman is just so guilted, and she's like, I'll go home and get my checkbook, right? And I was like, no, sorry. Please take as many as you want. This is because I'm trying to teach my kids generosity, so we want to give just because we love our neighbors. Take as many as you want. They're free. And she had 2 kids in the golf cart, and as they're driving off, I hear one of the kids go to her mom and go, what's generosity? And in my mind, I was like, who knows, right? Who knows what that conversation led to? Who knows? Who knows if that was like a mindset switch in that kid? Who knows? Like, you never know what God can do with an act of generosity. You never know. And chances are, it wasn't like that grapefruit changed anybody's life, but maybe that conversation did. Maybe for you, the 2 coins that you're giving in your life when God prompts you aren't changing lives, but it's something about being generous, about loving beyond yourself that is compelling. People want to fall in step with that. All right, finally. Okay, so sorry, for the when, what do you give? You give what you have. When do you give? You give when you feel a nudge. You give when you feel a nudge. Even if this is your first time ever watching a church service or first time ever in a church, I just have to believe that God is constantly nudging us. And when he's nudging us, chances are he's doing it because he knows that us responding to his nudge is going to draw us closer to him. The thing about nudges, by the way, is if you ignore a nudge, it becomes easier and easier to ignore. If you respond to a nudge, that nudge feels louder and louder in your lives. How long has it been since you have responded to a nudge that God gave you? How many nudges have you felt that you've just said, no, now's not the time. Nope, that's too inconvenient. Nope, I can't do that. And it's not that God stops nudging, we just become so callous. We shut our ears off. If you respond this next week in a way that God nudges you, I promise you the next one will be louder. And pretty soon we will be so open-handed in the way that we give and that we live that we will feel lockstep with God. What do we give? We give what we have. When you feel a nudge. Finally, is why not? Why not give? Wanted to tell a story really quickly. A little mild digression. First, let me sip this bad boy. Drinking water is only creepy if you precede it with bad boy. Okay. Story of Nehemiah. So this is about 445 BC, 445 years before life of Jesus. And a guy named Nehemiah, who is from Jerusalem originally. Jerusalem's the capital of Judah. And he is in Babylon, and he is the cupbearer to the king, which is like a high up trusted position, okay? Well, he gets word, Nehemiah does, that his hometown of Jerusalem is in shambles. The walls are destroyed, the gates are destroyed, and all the people that are there and the temple that is there that is set aside specifically for the praise and worship of God, all of those are susceptible. They're vulnerable. If anybody attacks, if anybody wants to take this thing over, they can because they have no protection, and it breaks Nehemiah's heart. So Nehemiah goes to the king and he says, "King, if you would allow me, I want to go back to Jerusalem and I want to lead this project of rebuilding the walls and the gates to protect the people, protect the temple there." And he has a great reputation. The king says, "Yes, not only go, but what do you need?" Nehemiah lists out his needs, and he goes back to Jerusalem ready to rebuild the temple, right? So he gets there, and as he's like rallying the troops, as he's getting the people of the city together, and he's saying, "Here's what you're going to do, and here's what you're going to do, here's what you're going to do, and here's what I'm going to do," doesn't disclude himself. He picks up rocks, and he begins to move. There's just this movement happening, right? Like you can feel it. There's momentum. Well, there are these three guys, the three naysayers, who, for all intents and purposes, are the enemy to the project, right? And their name are Sanballat, Geshem, and Tobiah. They don't have an army behind them. Essentially, their weapon is discouragement. And so as these guys are trying to rebuild, they are constantly just saying, "There's no way this is going to happen. What are you guys doing, man? What are you doing? If you work every day for the next 600 years, you won't get this done. Give up." They're saying, "Hey, even worse, if you fail at this, not only are you going to look foolish, but you're going to look even more susceptible to attacks. People are going to know you're not capable of anything. Everybody's going to want to invade you," right? Like give it up. Well, they pushed through this naysaying, and in this miracle, they rebuild the city in 52 days, which it says is so miraculous that everybody attributes it to God, not to hard work. That's how miraculous it was. Well, they get done. The temple is now protected. The people are now protected. And Nehemiah goes back to Babylon to regain his position. He's there for a while. And he decides that he's going to, after a while, go back and visit Jerusalem to see how they're doing, right? How's everything going now? So we pick it up in Nehemiah 13, verse 4. Verse 4. Wrong cadence. Okay. "But before that happened, Eliashib had given a room in the temple to Tobiah." Eliashib was the priest in charge of the storerooms in our God's temple, and he was a close friend of Tobiah. That room had been used for storing the grain offerings, incense, and the temple dishes and things. Had been, until they gave it to Tobiah. Then they had to move all that stuff. They also kept the 10th of grain, new wine, and oil for the Levites, singers, and gatekeepers in that room, which were the people who worked in the temple. And they also kept the gifts for the priests in that room. But Eliashib gave that room to Tobiah. Eliashib essentially takes the storeroom where the things that are set apart, not just for the praise and worship of God, but to supply the people that work in the temple with food, had given that away, had moved everything out, and now we have essentially this imposter that is in the storeroom, and because he's there, nobody goes in that room. They don't access the things that are for the temple. They don't use the money that is set aside for God. Nobody in the temple gets paid, and so the people in the temple have to move out. They have to go find another job, and so Nehemiah comes back and he sees this, and he's furious. Verse 6, "I was not in Jerusalem while all of this was happening. I had gone back to the king of Babylon. I went back to Babylon in the 32nd year that Artaxerxes was king of Babylon. Yes, I practiced saying that name about 50 times. Later, I asked the king for permission to go back to Jerusalem. So I came back to Jerusalem. There I heard about the sad thing that Eliashib had done. He had given Tobiah a room in the temple of God. I was very angry about what Eliashib had done, so I threw all of Tobiah's things out of the room. I gave commands for the rooms to be made pure and clean. Then I put the temple dishes and things, the grain offerings and the incense, back into the rooms. Here's my question to you today. When we're talking about why not, here's what I want to know. Do you have a Tobiah staying in your storeroom? Do you have a naysayer? Do you have somebody who is constantly speaking against, discouraging in the storeroom, in your finances, in your mindset about money, that is constantly telling you you can't do things? In a place that is actually set apart for praise and worship. Your finances are set apart. They are supposed to be a relational component between you and God. Do you have something in there that is constantly saying, no, don't do it? Don't do it. You can't possibly. You could give $1,000 every year, it would make no difference. What is in the storeroom, this place that's set apart that God wants to join you in, that is actually discouraging you from using that for God's benefit? What is your Tobiah? What is it? What is that voice? What is that lie? What is that negativity? What is that discouragement? Is your Tobiah narcissism? Is that what it is? Is it every time that you could give or you could be generous or you could offer this, something just comes up in you that says, you're the owner. It's the owner rather than the manager. This is yours. Do they deserve that? What if they don't take good care of it? What if you give money and they don't spend it on what you thought? You worked hard for this. They didn't even work that hard. Don't give them that. That's enabling. Create a rule so that you don't have to. This is about you, right? By the way, if narcissism is your Tobiah, that's not a shame thing. This is not about shame. It is important to articulate that. Yeah, I know it sounds gross when we use the word narcissism, but we all have that. It's important for us to recognize that that's there. When that flares up, instead of just, I don't want to deal with anything, rule so I don't have to deal with conviction, recognize that. If there's some narcissism there, okay, lean into it. Man, we want to get rid of that. If God wants us to have freedom, we have to get rid of that. Maybe your Tobiah is comfort. That's mine. That's mine. Isn't it easier just to enjoy yourself, right? Isn't it easier just to kind of build things up? You don't even have to worry about your neighbors, man. If you build a little fortress, you're good. You can just stay there. Things are just peachy keen for you and your family. Don't worry. Yeah, there's a lot of needs. You're not going to meet them all, so don't even get involved. Just worry about yourself, which goes well until you realize how short this life is. And you realize that one day you're going to be at the end of your life, and you're looking back in retrospect of the people that you helped. Or if you just were in this self-absorbed bubble. My wife is so good at gently encouraging me always to slip out of comfort for generosity. And will always say things like, that is given to us as a gift to be used to bless people. Man, get over yourself, Graham. Get over yourself. If God is nudging you. Now, are there personal boundaries? Yes, that's a whole nother talk. I do realize that those exist. But God also knows what is healthy for you. And if he is nudging you, he's not going to nudge you beyond what is healthy for you. He will nudge you beyond your comfort, promise you that. He won't nudge you beyond what is beyond what is healthy. Respond to that. Maybe your Tobiah is anxiety. Maybe when you start to think about being generous, you think, your Tobiah says, hey, what if you get laid off next week? Yeah, I know giving sounds great, but what if we don't have a job? We got to store everything up, right? What if you don't get your Christmas bonus? What if this? What if? Maybe you have a Tobiah of anxiety. I just want to remind you that the person who is giving you your daily opportunities for generosity is the one who knows more about you and your situation than anybody else, even more than you. He's given it to you for a reason. So, the why not? What do we give? We give what we have. When do we give? We give when we feel a nudge. And finally I want you to honestly ask, why not? Honestly ask that. Not just, why not? If you're not giving in a situation, if there's somebody who has a need and you go the opposite direction, I want you to wrestle with that. Is this a personal boundary thing? Is this something that is good? What does love require of me? Is it going the other way? Maybe. But you need to be brutally honest if it's actually a TOBIAH that is keeping you from entering the needs of somebody else. Is it narcissism or anxiety or comfort? Articulate that to yourself. The final point that I have here is closed hands, closed blessings, open hands, open blessings. We've been over this in the series, but God continues to bless, by the way. God continues to forgive, whether you're good or not, because he's compelled to, because he loves you, because you're his child. He will continue to give. It's just up to us whether or not we want to receive or not. And what is very counterintuitive is we think that the more we hoard, the more that we hold on, the more that we tight grip, that's good because we can self-protect and set ourselves up. And what he's saying is, I'm trying to give you blessings, bro, and you won't open up your hands to receive them. When we become a people, a church, who are open-handed, yes, I have this, but only because it's a blessing from God, please use. Yes, I have this money, but only because God is allowing me to do something with it, please have. Then we will find that we become a conduit of God's goodness, a conduit of God's grace, and that he uses us supernaturally in the lives of everybody else. Closed hands, closed blessings. Not because God isn't blessing, because we're not receiving them. Open hands, we become a conduit of the way that God is working. So I know that every week we have had an application at the very end with the wheel of generosity. And though it's not quite as cool that you're there online, we're going to do it again because, whoa, don't throw that up there. We blew it. Okay, that was going to be the surprise and delight. Now you just have to be delighted. All right, bring that wheel out here. Nice, Robert. Hey, can they hear you too?
They can hear me.
Okay, it says here on my notes, friendly banter.
Friendly banter.
Okay, so what does
y'all
that
ready?
mean? All right, ready? Hit it. Don't
All right.
show off. We know that you're ripped, but we're not trying to sit here for 4 hours.
Okay, let's see.
I'm predicting an 8.
8?
Dadgummit.
4.
Don't be a 4.
Woo!
Oh, I'm never going to live that down. Oh my gosh, Pastor Robbie already has a big head. Okay, number 4. Now let's bring up the graphic. Let's see. Number 4 says, find a need, meet a need. Oh my goodness, how silly. They're all the same one. All right.
Yes.
The old bait and switch. Didn't matter. We just like that wheel. Bradley spent so long on it, we're like, we can't have a week off. We still got to spin that thing. Here is what find a need, meet a need means this week. It means that finding a need, there is actually some excavation that has to happen. If you're going to find a need, that might mean leaning into the things that you have used rules to excuse yourselves from. That means having a conversation and not just, how are you doing? Good, me too. You know, like the answer that you just go your own way, but actually having a conversation, finding out what's going on in their lives, and then to find a need, you might even have to say, hey, is there something I can support you in? Hey, is there something going on right now that I can help with? Hey, I've got some time this week. Hey, I have some resources. I would love to be somebody that helped. Now, I recognize that this would be dicey if we asked you guys to do this every day for the rest of your lives. Okay, we can't do that. But we were thinking for a week, what if we do this for a week? What if for a week we are hyper in tune with the needs that are around us, and even if we don't see any, we go looking for some? The conversations in your spheres of influence, if you just start to ask, what could I help with? Is it yard work? Could I help with that? Is it putting up lights? Yes, I've already put up my lights and my whole neighborhood's jealous. Stop asking me about it. What is it that's going on in your sphere of influence that you can meet? And we just thought, how cool would this be? What are the stories going to be after a week of us meeting needs, whether it be financial or giving time or whatever? Cool? What do we give? We give what we have. Don't discount yourself just because you don't have a lot. When do we give? God will give you a nudge this week, I promise. Probably more than one. He will give you opportunity to give. I don't know if it's for the health of your heart or for the difference it's going to make, but he does. And then finally, when you feel that nudge come up and you're like, go the other way, articulate what you're feeling in that moment. Why not? Why not? Verbalize that and fight against that. That is a Tobiah in the storeroom that you do not need. God is trying to be in lockstep with you in a big area of our lives. Cool? All right, let's pray. Lord, I blew it. Now I'll start, God. Restart. Lord, no idea of the opportunities you're going to provide this week. I don't know how you're going to position us, maybe corporately as a church, individually, in our neighborhoods, in our family. I'm just starting to think of all the conversations I don't have when it comes to need. And if I started to view those as opportunities to lean in rather than to avoid, man, you can work some miracles. You can work some miracles. I think that in the story of rebuilding the walls in 52 days, at the end of this week, you can do enough in that time that we look back and say, that could only be God. I'm just so encouraged. I'm optimistic of what a church full of your children leaning into generosity for a week like this could look like. We don't want to be rational in it or decide what we think is right. Instead, we want to be open-handed, Father. Would you continue to bless us with whatever tool we have right now? If it's a lot of money, if it's medium, if it's not much, that you would use our position and our heart set of generosity to impact the people around us. Thank you for setting the model, the example so well with generosity. And we respond today because you are a good God. In your precious name, amen.